We all eat, we all sleep, we all, we're all human. We all have those basic needs, and we all need to have those needs met. I don't believe that anybody has a special need. Now, if you want to fan me with some grapes and give me a glass of wine while you're doing it, that's a special need. Other than that, I don't really see anything for special needs.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this brand new episode of the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. I'm your host, Nick Comstock. You guys, thank you for joining me on this Tuesday. I'm so glad you're here. I have a great guest, as I always do. I think all my guests are special. And today's guest, I especially think that she is a rock star. We'll get to her in just a minute, but I want to give you some show notes. For those of you who may not know, I was a part of a book with 11 other fantastic people with disabilities called Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of People with Disabilities. And I want to make sure that you get that book. You can get it on Amazon through Kindle or in paperback. And I want to make it known that you do not have to have a Kindle device to get the book. All you have to do is download the Kindle app on your phone, and you should be able to download Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of People with Disabilities. I'm chapter 5, Breaking the Mold. So make sure you read my chapter, but not only my chapter, the chapter of the other 11 amazing other authors that participated in the book and put our stories out there. Also, you guys, I mentioned this last week that I would love to continue bringing great content to you, and I'm going to continue doing that. My GoFundMe is in the bio. If you would be so helpful to help me, whether you give $5, $10, $20, to help me continue bringing you great content. I got to pay for podcast producing and my other public speaking needs. And I'm trying to get a handicap accessible van. So whatever you can donate, if you could go to my GoFundMe in the link tree and help me out, I would greatly appreciate it. Now that we've got those show notes out of the way, I want to introduce my awesome guest. You guys, she's the author of the blog Powerfully Disabled, and she powerfully demonstrates that there are no limits when it comes to your disability. Sky's the limit, and I'm so happy to have her. Governor DeWine used her story in his State of the State address. We're going to get into all that and so much more. Please help me welcome Kelsey Weaver to the program. Kelsey, how are you doing?
Great, Nick. How are you doing? It's such an honor to be on the podcast, being a longtime fan and friend of what you're doing. Thank you so much for having me.
It's the pleasure is all mine, and you and I have been on stages together several times, and we've worked on several different projects and hope to work on several more together. And like I've told the audience twice already, I just think you're such a rock star. So I appreciate the fact that you have agreed to come on Nick Speaks and share your story. To start out, Kelsey, why don't you tell a little bit about who you are, and if you don't mind sharing what your disability is, and we'll get into a bunch of great stuff in a minute. But first of all, tell everybody a little bit about who Kelsey is.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelsey Weaver. As Nick said, I'm 23 years old, and I'm a full-time wheelchair user who was born with cerebral palsy. Doing my day-to-day work, I'm a social worker that also helps support people with developmental disabilities. But on my own personal work, I'm an author of a blog I'm really proud of named Powerfully Disabled. I'm an advocate across the state, and I'm just really proud to be able to use my voice. Some of my hobbies I enjoy is cooking and baking, as well as getting out in nature, going to the metro parks, spending time with my partner, and also with my friends and family. So that's a little about me.
That's awesome. I didn't know. I'm sure you've mentioned it on the stage when we're together, but I don't remember you being into baking and cooking. So now I'll have to come to Toledo where you are and try some out because you know I'm a fan of food. So what is your specialty if it when it comes to baking?
Just really whatever I'm in the mood for. Do you know what stress baking is, Nick? When people bake when they're stressed? Like for me, it's a
Yes.
form of therapy. But I've been told I make a pretty mean chocolate chip cookie recipe from other people.
I love a good chocolate chip cookies.
So I guess that's kind of like my strong suit. But really, it's just whatever I'm in the mood for if I have a sweet tooth.
Okay, all right. Do you put walnuts in your chocolate chip cookie or no nuts?
No nuts, but I can't give my recipe or it wouldn't be my specialty.
That's true. I just wanted because I'm a nut person when it comes to my chocolate chip cookies, but no nuts is fine too. My twin brother doesn't like nuts in his chocolate chip cookies, never has. So yeah, I totally get that. Well, you'll have to bring me some sometime because now that you told me you're famous for those, I want to try them.
Yeah, you know what, Nick? Either the next time I see you or if you get to Toledo sooner, like if you come to Toledo, you're more than welcome. We'll have a dinner for you and you can try some of my food out. How does that?
That sounds great. What about when you cook? What do you cook?
Once again, whatever I'm in the mood for, I love Mexican food like tacos and
Too.
things like that. That's like my favorite food. My partner loves Italian, so sometimes I'll make Italian food for him. But really, if it's something I'm craving, I just like to find new recipes and kind of experiment from there. That's the funnest part about cooking for me, for sure.
Awesome. That's great. I love hearing about other disabled folks' hobbies, and the fact that cooking is one of yours is just fascinating and awesome. And I'm a foodie. I've always been a fan of the Food Network, so I'm sure you're a fan of the Food Network too. Yeah, so that's great. Kelsey, I want to talk about. So, were you diagnosed with cerebral palsy since birth?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you've been in a wheelchair probably since you were really tiny, like myself.
That's correct. I've always used a mobility device. At first, I used a walker, but then I had to get surgery for my hips.
Yeah.
I had to get like screws put in my hips to hold my hips together.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, it was a very painful. I had some hip pain there for a while when I was younger, and then I ended up using a chair full time, but I've always relied on a mobility device. But I would say I've been in a chair since about 5 to 6 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I think it was about 3 years old. And when I was 8 years old, I don't know if you've ever heard of this surgery, I had to have a bilateral hamstring release and two casts all the way from my ankles all the way up to my hips for 8 weeks. And it was one of the most painful things that I've ever been through. But it needed to be done. I still don't know. I think it was to prevent tightness in the back of the hamstrings. That was the nature of the surgery, and that was the purpose of it. So being that your wheelchair is all you've ever known, having a mobility device, a walker. Did you grow up a pretty happy go lucky kid and this is just my lot in life?
Yeah, I will say, Nick, I had a great childhood and I had an awesome family who loved the world of me and still thinks the world of me. I I was able to, and they encouraged me from a young age to be out there and to be active. Because when you have a disability, people don't always come up to you and interact with you as you might hope. So they taught me from a young age to kind of be involved and to kind of speak out. And in a lot of ways, I've been able to do that. I'm still a very shy person in some aspects, but I've been able to today living on my own. I think it's one of the big reasons why I'm able to speak up for myself because they encourage me to be active from a young age and to kind of get out there and to use my voice. So I credit that for a lot of my advocacy and, having a lot of family support. I had grandparents and parents who just, like I said, were great supports. And I knew I had a disability, you know, I knew I had a disability from a young age, but they always told me you can do anything you put your mind to. So for me, that's just all I've ever known. And I was encouraged that from a very young age. So as I got older, I knew there were barriers, but I guess it didn't register till I got older because, my grandparents were just like in my family, they were like, if you want to do it, go
You
for it,
can do whatever you want. Yeah.
So I think that's helped me in a lot of ways, even today as a young adult.
Yeah, it certainly does. I know it's been a struggle for me. I talk about it a lot on this program. It's been a struggle for me because I always have not had that family support, and people talk to me and they say, well, the more support you don't have, the more people you have telling you can't do it. That should give you more. In some ways, it does, but also it frustrates you because you feel like you're out here doing this alone. So that's very important, and I'm so glad that your family has been there for you and has told you that you can do anything that you put your mind to, because that is so important. I want to talk about your schooling years. How was school for you? Did you feel like because I know for me, I struggled fitting in with other students who weren't disabled, and I was put in a special ed class with people who couldn't talk and communicate very well. And so I just kind of felt like a fish out of water, being that, I didn't fit in with the classmates who didn't have a disability. And I also felt like I didn't fit in with the classmates who did. So, what was your schooling experience like for you?
Wow. I will say to start off, my grandmother and my mother were fierce advocates to put me in mainstream classes.
Sure.
So I was not in any for lack of better term, like special ed classes growing up. I was in all regular classes with my peers.
hmm How did they treat you? How did your regular peers without a disability treat you? Did you ever feel like I don't fit in, they don't like me? How did you deal with that, if any of that came up?
Well, I'm not gonna say it wasn't difficult because there were times it definitely was
Sure.
di- difficult. Especially those teenage years were very, very difficult. Because it's hard enough. I mean, we're all figuring out who we are at that age, you
Right.
know, regardless of our disability. Where do we fit in? What's our purpose? We're all figuring that out. And so, you know, we had all our own stuff on top of this part of my identity, which is my disability. I think it was, and don't get me wrong, I don't want any of my people that I went to school with, this is not an offense to you. This is just how my own experience is. So if any of you are watching this, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I had connections in school. Like I was part of the theater. I was part of the marching band. I did the choir. So I was what they called a musical geek or nerd. I was part of all those programs. However, I did not really have any long-lasting relationships outside of the school, but that was a positive for me. I mean, it was just really hard for me to connect with other folks, whether that be accessibility barriers, whether that be just not, and sometimes it isn't even about them. Sometimes it's just you don't click with people, you know?
Sure.
And sometimes, so I mean, there was that, but I also, the musical theater is basically, at that point, played a big positive impact on me going to school. But no, I didn't really have a lot of long-lasting relationships. As far as like how they treated me, I went with the same class pretty much all throughout my school career. It was those same folks, and they knew I was a strong advocate for myself. I mean, from a pretty early age. Like, I'll tell a story. I think I might have even told this on my blog, but I've told this story numerous amount of times. So I hope you humor me and let me tell that story for a minute. I
Yeah.
was 5 or 6 years old. I was young, and there was this kid that kept kicking me under the table. And at this time, when you're a kid, Nick, it doesn't really register to you until you get older. But I realize now she was trying to see if I was paralyzed.
Oh my.
And she kept kicking me under the table. And I had a one-on-one aide at the time. And every time I would get the aide and show her what she was doing, she would stop and she kicked me under the table all day long. And it was so annoying. So I remember when we went out to school that day, and this was like kindergarten age. I remember when we went out to school, she said goodbye to me, and we were in front of all the parents, and she was acting real nice to me, like nothing had ever happened. So guess what I did, Nick?
What'd you do?
I took my wheelchair, and at this point, I had my first electric chair.
My.
I chased her all the way down the parking lot, and I basically told her about herself. And I was young at this point, and like I chased her down the parking lot in my electric chair, and I was like, "You're not my friend. Like you were kicking me the whole time." And I basically told her about herself. And from then on, with that young lady, I never had any issues. But all that to say, even from a young age, I've been a strong advocate. And people knew, even though I had a physical disability, there was nothing wrong with me mentally. So, I don't think, not saying that there wasn't hard times, not saying that there wasn't times that I felt isolated from other folks, because I did. But I think as far as being actually in school, people knew better. And my peers knew better than not to mess with me because they knew they were getting it at some point. So
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's an awesome story. I love that. I've never heard you tell that story. As many times that I've been on stage with you, I've never heard you tell that story. That's Awesome. I have a similar story to that, and I'll mention the guy's name. I don't care. I have no shame. His name was Omar, and he was making fun of some girls or being rude to them, and then I got involved, and I think he said something about my mom, and I turned up my chair as high as it could go, and I chased him all around the school, and I was like, "You're not gonna," and that was the first time that I really remember sticking up for myself. And I remember my brother, I was in like sixth grade at the time, and my brother was a couple grades above me. And he came by the special ed classroom and was like, "What's going on?" And so I told him the story and about how he was making fun of some girls. And then he turned in and he was making fun of me. And then so I chased him around the school, and the whole school at the time, it was like 7:30 in the morning before school started at 8. So the whole school at the time saw it, and it was just, of course I broke down and cried, because normally that's not me. Chasing people around in my wheelchair is not me. Now I'm a little bit different. I may chase you around and not really care about it. So yeah, that's a really similar story. That's funny. That made me laugh. That's good. So was there ever a time that because you seem like you've had a strong advocate in you from the very beginning. Was there ever a time, and I'm sure there has been, that you have said, "God, I hate this wheelchair. This is driving me nuts." Or maybe I shouldn't say I'm sure there has been, because I don't know you. So I'll take that back.
Well, I mean, the only thing is, Nick, I've never really had anything to compare this to, and there's been times, let me put it this way. There's been times where I wish, like, as far as like an accessibility standpoint, or people's understanding, I wish it would change.
You wish
But
people had more compassion for people in our situation.
exactly, there's been times where, people know that I'm showing up to an event, but they don't take the time to make sure things are accessible. Because I mean, yeah, there are times that I've been gotten upset, but that's really the root of the issue if we think about it, right? I mean,
It's not accessible.
if people took 5 minutes out of their day, like that's literally all it takes to make sure that people are being supported, to make sure that we have all we need. And if they don't know, like if it's somebody's first time getting supported, taking them by the hand and saying, "Okay, let's figure this out together." How do I put this? For example, like support going somewhere or just checking in. And I know some people are always like, how, like I was in a meeting with the organization as part of my advocacy. This was not a work thing, this was like an advocacy thing.
Sure.
And they asked me, they were like, "How do we make sure this is good for people with disabilities? This reflects people with disabilities and what they want." And it's like hilarious to me because people think it's rocket science. Just ask us.
Yeah.
For example, can I ask you a question? I'll put it this way. If two people have CP, like my partner and I, we both have CP, but it still affects our bodies very differently. In some ways we're the same, in some ways we're different. So even though some people have the same disability, it's gonna affect them different ways. And
Yeah.
so I think that's what frustrates me. People want you at the table, and people, whether that be personally, professionally, people want people with disabilities at the table. but yet they don't want to do the research or the time to have that compassion to say, okay, what do you need to feel supported? Because
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
want
we can't.
it, but they don't want to take the time to say, okay, we know we can get you to the table. How can we make sure you have your best experience when you're at the table? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what frustrates me. I mean, I can't change being in a chair. That's the way I was born. But I can change people's attitudes and I can change people's stereotypes that they have against people with disabilities. So I guess I've never really been upset about being in a chair, and that's not some super amazing thing. It's just that it's all my life. You know, I've never been able to walk, so that's all I know, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked about a little bit about this in private. Because you and I are both people of faith, and we've talked about how some people that are Christians feel the need to constantly pray for our healing or that we need cured. What are your feelings on that?
Oh boy, Nick, I have to watch because this could be a whole other podcast. I mean, I can go for an hour just speaking about this topic by itself. But I will say this for me personally and for my journey, and you jump in because I know you're a Christian guy as well, and that's what I've always really respected about you. You've been very outspoken about your faith as a person with a disability, and I love it. So thank you for that. But
Absolutely.
here's my thing. Like growing up, people like I would literally go to the store and people would come up to me, put their hands on me and pray for healing. Like, dude, I'm at the grocery store. Like, what the world? Like,
To get my food.
right, that's what frustrates me. But what I will say is I do believe that this is my purpose. And I believe that God placed me in a chair for a reason, and so I can help to advocate for other people. So, and it really frustrates me when people say, you know, that God's going to heal me. I understand they're coming from a good place, but it
Right.
frustrates me because I'm like, no, I believe that this is my purpose and God's plan for me. So, like I said, I'm not gonna get on my soapbox because we can
Oh,
talk.
that's what this is for. You're more than welcome to get on your soapbox.
It's like, you know, I believe that this is my purpose to help speak for other people and to help advocate. So, if I could change one person's mindset when it comes to disability, then I believe that's my purpose as a Christian and you know, as a human being. Now, I do believe, and I don't know how deeply we want to get onto this next. So if I'm getting too deep, just cut me off.
Oh, you're
I do believe when we go to heaven, we will be healed, but not here on earth. That is just my personal belief.
yeah. I mean that's a good belief, and I respect that. I used to be a Baptist, and I switched within the past 6 years to Pentecostal. And you know that Pentecostals are all about healing and
Yeah.
knocking people down. And sometimes I tell people, they're like, Nick, what time does your church start? I say it starts at 10 o'clock, and we don't get out of the floor until about 11:45. That's what I say to people. And then, and I will say in the past 6 years that I've started believing for my healing, but here's what believing more for my healing. But here's what I honestly believe is that Yes, I believe that God's already healed us. He's already healed us. But the manifestation of our healing will not happen until we get to heaven. Because I believe that he paid for our healing on the cross. And people say to me all the time, well, don't you want to be healed, here on earth and all that stuff? And that would be wonderful, if he heals me here on earth, if he heals me here in heaven, great. Or, here there in heaven. If he doesn't heal me until heaven, he's still God. It doesn't make any difference to me whether he heals me here or heals me when I take my last breath on this earth. And a lot of people like to say, Nick, you've gotten too comfortable in your Cadillac. And I immediately correct them and say, excuse me, it's a Rolls Royce. But I don't believe that I have gotten too comfortable. I believe that I'm at where I am because God wants me there. And people say, well, your wheelchair is an attack from the enemy. Well, okay, it might be, but I believe every person that I inspire and every person that I encourage to go on, I believe that's a dart in the enemy's face. I believe that's a black eye in the enemy's face because what the Bible says, what the devil meant for evil, God meant for good. And I
Thing next to her day to tell you
yeah,
about your body and about your life. They're not God. The only person that is allowed to judge me is God. And when that time comes, we can sit down and have a chat with God. Believe me, there's nobody else that wants to do that more than me. But until then, your body and your life, that's nobody else's judgment but God. Don't listen to these people. And I'm sure these people don't have a podcast that touches millions of people.
you're so sweet, and I appreciate that, and I will definitely take your advice on that too. So I mentioned at the top of the program, I know we're kind of going all over the place here, but this is how I like my conversations to be relaxed and not too scripted. I mentioned your blog at the very top of the show called Powerfully Disabled. Can you tell everyone what inspired you to start that?
So I grew up in a very royal community. We didn't have a lot of advocacy groups. And the ones we did, I did not feel like represented people with disabilities in the way I wanted to be represented. And this was during like the height of 2020 COVID pandemic that I got involved with the different advocacy. And so I wanted to be more involved. I started learning about the disability rights movement during the height of the pandemic. There was a documentary that came out. It's called Crip Camp. They had a camp in the Berkeley, California area. And from that camp, it basically designed the disability rights movement. And it kind of really amazed me because it's like they don't teach you anything about disability history in school. There were all these people like I knew there was an ADA from a very young age. I went to my IEP meetings at a very young age. And so I knew there was an ADA, I knew there were IEPs, I knew there were supports out there to help support us, but I did not know the history of kind of how we got there and all our people that helped start the movement, like Judy Human and all those individuals that kind of helped started that. So basically, I went down this rabbit hole of advocacy and kind of like the people who helped start it out. And then I was like, well, how can I get involved more on a local end? There was not really a lot of spaces in the way I wanted us to be represented. A lot of the organizations, quite frankly, treated the people with disabilities like children, and they weren't having us have a say with our own voice. So I decided to take matters in my own hands, and that's when I came up with the blog Powerfully Disabled. It's something I'm extremely proud of.
Yes.
From a young age, I've always loved telling stories and writing and just getting my thoughts out there. It's something that's very therapeutic for me. It's like all those things that you've always really wanted to say, but you just kept it locked inside. For me, that's my blog. That's my release. Someday in the future, I'd love to help other young disabled people find their own spaces and
And
become
find their
more.
voice.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Powerfully Disabled has opened a lot of doors for me. At one point, I had over 5,000 people that readers to Powerfully Disabled. It got attention of a lot of people, which I'm very blessed about. And it's how it kind of opened the door for advocacy for me on the state level.
Yeah, did that also help you to kind of get off the shoestring budget of Social Security and Medicaid? Did that
Um,
also door
no,
monetary?
no, not monetarily. I've never made a penny off Powerfully Disabled. For me, it was very much just a passion project.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe somebody get out there and help Kelsey make some extra money. We're always trying to make some extra money as disabled people. I will say too that's I started to say that's my goal here with Nick Speaks is to give, there's a lot of talk about safe spaces here in America.
Yeah,
And I don't feel disabled people, and you can jump in on this anytime. I don't feel disabled people have a safe space to really express how we feel
I agree.
because, you and I are Christians, like we said. And if we really express how we feel, a lot of times coming from the Christian community, it's you're bitter at God. Why don't you just be, and I don't support this term, but I'm just going to use this term to be honest, because I've literally had people say this. Why don't you just be glad that you're not mentally retarded? And it's, first of all, that's very offensive, and just to tell me to be glad that I'm not worse off than what I was, than what I am. That's like blowing my issues off, but normal people who aren't disabled get on social media and everything and complain about their lives and complain about, their husbands and their wives and their boyfriends and their girlfriends. But you let disabled people complain about their lives. Well, at least you have the government helping you. My favorite is, why don't you get off your ass and get a job? Well, first of all, it's hard for me to get up off my ass. It's kind of why I'm in a wheelchair. So, if I try to get up off my ass, I may fall. So, I mean, how can we as disabled folks, in your opinion, shove past all the crap that we go through and make our voices heard?
Well, first of all, Nick, I want to say I'm sorry that those comments have been thrown at you. And I think that's part of the issue. No matter, how do I say the right language here? No matter someone's mental capacity or how their disability affects them, we should be allowed to take up space, number one.
Amen.
We are allowed and we should be allowed to take up space. And so I'm sorry that that was thrown at your way. And please know you are valued, you are loved, and you have every right to take up space and have your voice be heard. I think personally in my journey, and this is something I'm still finding, but to have a community of your people that you can lean on, because we're human, disability or not, we're gonna have a bad day.
Yeah.
Find your people, whether that be family, friends, people online, like Powerfully Disabled, or through the Nick Speaks podcast, that you can speak with and kind of share the mutual connection. If you have a partner, speak with them, people, whoever you can go to without judgment and say, listen, I've been having a really shitty day today. Can I talk this out with you? And can I speak with you about what's been going on and about our voices being heard? That's why podcasts and things like that are so important, to be able to, get your voice out there. There's only one Nick Comstock. There's only one Kelsey Weaver. But what your viewers bring to the table is their own unique experience.
That's right.
So share your story as well.
Yep.
And it might not be through TikTok. It might not be through a podcast. It might not be through a blog. You might be a comedian. I mean, who knows? Whatever your talent is, or whatever you'd like to share, whatever medium that may be, go for it. It doesn't have to look like us. It can be through any medium.
Yeah, and I will say, because a lot of people with disabilities email me actually, and I want to go ahead and give my email out so more of you can email me, nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. A lot of people email me to that email and they say, or they contact me through the comments and they say, I'm just really scared to get my story out there. Or I don't want people gawking at me. And I have to say this very gently to this disabled community. You're going to have to get over people gawking at you, because it's going to happen. What you have to do is, educate people, because that's a part of the problem. Is a lot of people with disabilities complain about issues, but they don't really educate people how it affects them. And I believe if we as disabled people band together and educate folks who aren't disabled, and even folks who are, that don't have our disability, but they're on a totally different spectrum, I believe this world could be a better place for the disabled. And you have a story. Everyone who is disabled has a story. Whether you write it in a blog like Kelsey does, or whether you talk about it on TikTok every day like I do, or whether you come through a podcast every week like I do, everyone has a story. You have to get it out. You have to get it out. And I want to say, because I believe a lot of people in the disabled community have the victim mentality. Break that off of you. You're not a victim. Look how far you've come. The doctor said you wouldn't be able to make it, but yet, you're bright, you're intelligent, you're beautiful if you're a woman, you're a handsome, sexy man if you're a guy. Shoot it off there. You know, bring yourself to the forefront. Put yourself right out there. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have haters, but for every one hater you have 3 more people out there who are cheering you on. You have to do this, and you can do this.
I think, if I can jump in, Nick, I think for me, so much of it is about rewriting the narrative.
Yeah.
If there's something that, like, for example, on my blog, and this is probably my favorite blog I've wrote to this day, and I don't know how familiar you are with my blog, Nick,
Sadly, I'm going to get familiar with it, but yeah, I'm not. Go ahead and share.
I wrote a post years ago now, and it's called "My name is Kelsey Weaver, not your inspiration."
Yes.
Because it bothers me when people come up to you, especially people that I don't know, and they're like, "Oh, you're such an inspiration." It really bothers me. And so
Because you feel like inspiration porn, right?
I do. And I feel like, there are some people who have supported me for day one, like my family and some really good family friends who have watched me and grow since day one. And they're inspired by my mission and my values and everything that I've come to be as a person. I believe that's a different thing. But I've literally gone out to the grocery store or out in the community, and people are like, "It's so good to see you out and about." Like, I'm not a normal person. Like, I just do things a little differently. And it used to bug me when people said that. So finally, I said, "You know what? I'm going to flip the script. I'm not your inspiration. My name is Kelsey Weaver. I'm not
Yeah.
where to be inspired. I'm just a normal person every day, like any of your viewers out there." And
Well, I think a lot
I
of the people say that. I'm sorry to cut you off. I apologize. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to cut you off, but I think a lot of the reason people say that is because, there are a lot of special needs parents out there and a lot of family members of people with disabilities that, quite frankly, don't give a crap. You know, I was shoved in a room with a TV, phone, and computer for several years and didn't go anywhere except medical appointments and church and anywhere else my family felt like taking me. And I don't think it's because my family was bad. I mean, we had our issues. I think it was because they just didn't know what to do. That's why I tell parents now, make sure your kids get involved in the community. And I think a lot of the problem is that we're looked at as burdens, and it's going to take some extra time, and God forbid somebody spend some extra time. So when we do that, when we go out and we do the regular things, people are surprised because I feel like a lot of us are still, sheltered. We're put in nursing homes, we're put in group homes and forgot about. So I get what you're saying, and I get what a lot of people say. We don't want to be inspiration porn, but I also understand where a lot of non disabled people are coming from.
Here's the thing that I think bugs me the most overall.
Sure.
And I think I also touch about this in my blog as well. I have a blog called "My Needs Are Not Special."
Yeah.
Because that's something else that irks me. And I want to be clear, these are my personal opinions and my preferences only.
Absolutely.
You should be, if you're able to talk with or speak with, they're able to give you their opinion on what the person with a disability would like to be referred to as, or what preferences they have in their own daily life, then you need to go by that. This is just me speaking as Kelsey Weaver.
Yeah.
I end all be all. This is just my personal opinion, and this is my thing, Nick. Why do we even need to have these labels?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing that irks me: when we say special needs, okay, well, we might have to do things differently, but our needs are still the same. Well,
Yeah.
we have to accommodate things to do things differently. Like, for example, I cannot write physically. I can write my name, but that's about it.
Me
So
too.
I do a lot of dictate. I do a lot of, talking to my phone. Even when I do text, I do a lot of typing. I do about everything on the computer. I don't write physically, that's an accommodation for me. But that doesn't mean I have like a special need or something special. We all eat, we all sleep, we all, we're all human. We all have those basic needs and we all need to have those needs met. So I don't believe that anybody has a special need. Now, if you want to fan me with some grapes and give me a glass of wine while you're doing it, that's a special need. Other than that, I don't really see anything for special needs. I really don't. So I kind of do get very cautious when I hear people speak about special needs. Yes, your child may use a special assistive technology. Yes, they might use different accommodations, but they still have needs and they're not special than anybody else.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. That you bring that up about, you're irritated when people call it special needs. What do you think about these other acronyms that are now being used in place of like disability, like differently?
disability. Yeah, just say the word disability, please. Please, for the love of God, please just say it. That gets me so frustrated. And it's like, really, these terms, Nick, are coming from non-disabled people. That's
Yeah.
what it is. I'm
What do you think about it when disabled people use it? Like I've heard disabled people say in advocacy meetings that we've been in together, I'm not disabled, I'm differently abled. Or I don't have a disability, I have different abilities. Like, okay,
meetings that we've
yeah.
been
Maybe not that you've been in, but meetings that I've heard people with disabilities say, I don't have a disability, I have different abilities.
with. See, listen, I'm not telling anybody what to call themselves, but I think that's also a lot to do with society, how they see it. Because here's the thing, Nick, disability is not a bad thing. Like even in like when me and you were growing up, there wasn't a lot of representation
No, there wasn't.
for people with disabilities. And that's part of the issue. I think the other people that maybe they've grown up around or been around have a certain mindset. I think it has to do more with the mindset than it has to do because having a disability is not a bad thing. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been around, me and you both respectively have been around so many great advocates that are breaking barriers every day. Having a disability does not mean that's it. You're done. Like it's over with.
Yeah. Because you said your disability is a part of you. Do you think that your disability defines who you are, or is that separate?
I think it's a big role. It's a big part of my life and the person I am today for sure, but I do not believe it defines me.
That's good. That's good. One more topic that I would like to address. If you don't want to address it, we don't have to, but I would like to because we've mentioned it several times. Is you said that you have a partner that has CP, and I know your partner very well. He's a very good friend of mine. Hopefully, eventually, he'll come on my podcast. He also has a podcast, and did you ever question whether or not you would have a romantic partner?
I'm not going to lie to you, Nick. Like, yeah, that is part of me that I have questioned because so many people that I met before my previous, I mean, my current relationship that I'm in now, my disability was a barrier to them. And I think what's so cool about the relationship I'm in now, like it didn't it did not like, well, I can say from my perspective, it came as a total surprise. I wasn't looking for it. It just kind of happened very organically and
Sure.
naturally. I mean, he is my partner, but above everything, like, he's my best friend and favorite person on the planet. Like, he is, we relate in so many ways. He just understands me so fully and so respectfully. So I think it happened above all that. But to answer your question, yeah, I did question it. I think I was cool with being by myself for a long time. So nobody was more surprised than me that this worked out in the way it did.
You said your family has been really supportive. Did they ever think that you were going to have a romantic partner, or did they kind of tell you, it's kind of not going to happen?
To be honest with you, I think they thought it would happen more than me, to be honest.
Really? Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Were you looking? Because I've had somebody ask me one time, very ignorant question. They said, Nick, so does that mean because you're in a wheelchair that you have to marry somebody who's blind?
Really.
They automatically, a lot of people automatically just assume, like when I had a boyfriend for a year, a lot of people just automatically assumed, is he disabled? Like, no. So was that a thing for you? Were you specifically looking for someone that was a wheelchair user like you?
The way we met, I mean, the way we met, well, we were friends for about a year before we even started dating. So, but no, well, I could say neither one of, well, let me rephrase it this way because I don't want to speak for my partner, but I will say for me, I was never, and I'm pretty sure for him as well, we were never looking really for someone specifically that has a disability. It just kind of happened really organically. I mean, even the way we met, like, it's, I'm glad it happened the way it did, but it's not like you're in a wheelchair, so. That's the one. It just kind of happened very, very, very organically. And it is kind of a really special story about how we met. So,
Yeah,
no,
to get into that sometime, maybe on another episode. I would love to.
I mean, I think it had made our relationship easier. Just
Sure.
we do have the same disability and we are similar in a lot of ways, both within our disabilities and just as people. So it's like I don't really have to explain myself where I've had with other previous folks, or with some folks we were not really able to get really romantically involved or linked because that was a barrier for them. As with this, it wasn't really an issue, but
They're dealing with barriers together. Yeah.
but I don't think it was like, well, you're in a chair and I'm in a chair, so it makes sense. I just think, like I said, we were friends for a year. We were involved in an advocacy group. Well, how it happened was, and I'll have to ask Nate if he's okay, comfortable with me sharing it. I know he might not care, but I still want to ask him before it
Yes.
gets published.
We'll have to ask him, before we can do that in another episode. I don't want to I don't want to go there if he's not comfortable. So yeah, we'll edit that part out. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to get his permission, before he watches it and he might be caught off guard. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, but as far as just talking about your relationship, that's okay, and we'll go.
but I
Yeah.
will say, and I'm pretty sure I can share this, we are also both really involved in advocacy spaces, both
Yes, you.
professional and personal life. So we met through a disability space. So that's how we met. And he was kind of like my mentor when we first started talking.
That's awesome. That's cool.
It wasn't looking for romantic at first.
Yeah, yeah, it takes time to build it. I want because I mentioned this at the top of the program, and before we go, I want to get into it because you had a really big experience earlier this year with Governor Mike DeWine. Can you tell us about that? He used you in his State of the State address.
Yes, he most certainly did, and I'm extremely blessed to have the opportunity. So I'm a social worker. I graduated from Ohio University in 2024, and I use OD. And for those of you who are not familiar, that's a state program we have here in Ohio that helps support people to, like, if they're going to college, they can get accommodations, books, and tuition they need, as well as any accommodational support they need. And so I had used OOD throughout my educational journey, and OOD decided to feature my story. And I'm still unclear as to how, but my story landed on the governor's desk. His team saw it, and
Wow.
they were empowered, so empowered by my story. They decided to use it in his speech while talking about OOD and, some of the progress we have made within the program. So I was actually asked to come to the State House in March and, be there to have my story be represented, as well as hear the governor speak about my story. And I also had the opportunity to meet the governor as well. So that was an incredible experience.
How does it make you feel as a state advocate and not only as someone who receives services, but as a state advocate? How does it make you feel to have a governor that really makes sure that people with disabilities are front and center?
Um, and it's a great feeling. And I told the governor to his face when I spoke to him what a game-changing program that was for me in my own personal experience, and how important it is to keep the funding for the as an advocate, and for my as an advocate, I believe there's still a lot more to be done with
Yeah.
the OOD program. However, I still need to acknowledge that it has helped me tremendously in my own personal journey, and it's really a big part of why I'm here today, and I'm able to build the life that I want.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are not a fan of how Governor DeWine handled COVID and how Governor DeWine does things. But when it comes to, I don't know the exact number, but when it comes to the disability services here in Ohio and our DSPs, Governor DeWine has, I know it's in the billions. Governor DeWine has enlisted billions of dollars into has invested billions of dollars into our field. And it's very wonderful to see um politician who actually gives a shit about people with disabilities. And so no matter how you feel about Governor DeWine and how he's run the state, be rest assured people like me and Kelsey are in a better place because of the policies that Governor DeWine has put in place for people with disabilities. And so your tax dollars, as far as people with disabilities are concerned, are going to good places. And I just want to thank Governor DeWine for that personally. Is there room for improvement? Yes, there's always room for improvement when it comes to the disability world. And I speak up and I speak out and I speak loud about that. But Governor DeWine, as far as the budget goes for DSPs and as far as the budget goes for disability services, Governor DeWine, I feel, has done a tremendous job. And so I personally, along with Kelsey, want to thank Governor DeWine for doing such a great job for people with disabilities in this state of Ohio, in the Midwest that nobody really likes to live in.
Absolutely, yeah. But I want to say as well, Nick, Governor DeWine is very personable person, and
Mhm.
he genuinely takes the time to listen to the stories, the concerns, the improvements of, okay, how can we make this better? I
Yeah.
know from my personal experience, like the state of the state address, like, and I'm not trying to get political here, just how I'm explaining it, like,
No, go ahead. Share.
he, like on the TV, you know how whoever the sitting president is has a address that he addresses the whole country. This is
Yes.
for the whole entire state. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of different programs across the state being presented. So, there's a lot of people in the room when you go back to meet the governor. They are rushing you through, he's has a lot of time. He's a very busy man. But when I spoke with him, there were people literally rushing him on that was like, come on, Governor, you have to go. He took the time to hear my story. He did not care about anyone else in that room. It's like for a moment, it was just me and him speak. And so I have to give him the credit where credit's due on that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think my legs, were your legs shaking like spaghetti? I think my legs would be.
Literally, it was like an on out of body experience because I did not even know to the week. Well, I guess I can say this now, but I did not even know to the week of the speech if
Yeah.
the story was actually going to be included. So, and I knew a little bit about what they were going to say, but not all. So,
Yeah.
hearing, and the first time I heard that, my part was live as everyone else was hearing it on the television and stuff. It was a very surreal moment, and I'm very thankful and appreciative. We have 88 counties in the state of Ohio. So the fact that they selected my story, it's an honor for me, and it doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kelsey, I want to wrap up here, but before I do that, I want to ask you, what are your final thoughts for somebody that's watching and listening that may be similar into your position? They're like, I would like to do what Kelsey does, or I'd like to do what Nick does. What are your final thoughts of encouragement for them?
I would just say, as scary as it is, because even for me, I deal with a lot of anxiety. I deal with a lot of imposter syndrome. I
Yeah.
deal with a lot of, okay, is this my purpose? Is this God's calling for my life? And am I doing what I need to be doing? But even though the, those voices can get loud sometimes, find those people that support you and don't be afraid to put yourself out there no matter how scary it can be. because you never know, there's those reasons, those dreams are in your heart for a reason. They're planted there for a reason.
Sure.
So if you have a gut feeling about something, then you need to get out there and do it. And I know for myself, I'm so grateful that I did. I'm on social media. Please feel free to keep up with my journey, or if you have any questions about it, you can always reach out to me directly through Powerfully Disabled. I'm here to support in any way that I can.
Yeah, we're going to put the link to Powerfully Disabled. And we'll also, if you're okay, Kelsey, we'll also put the links to your social media and where people can find you to
Yeah,
reach out to you.
get out to Powerfully Disabled, and then also my Instagram.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to say too, before we leave today, I'm going to give some final show notes, and I want to give my final words and say that, as disabled people, we're going to get 100,000 no's before we get a yes. And once you get that yes, that's when the snowball effect happens. But you can't give up when you hear that 100,000th no. You got to keep going until you can get that 100,001 that turns into a yes, and then you're going to get the 100,002 and the 100,003. The message is you can't give up, because if you give up, that's when your momentum stops, and it always is going to get worse or harder before it gets better, and that's when you have to keep going. So I want to thank Kelsey for coming on Nick Speaks today and sharing her story. Kelsey, thank you so much. And just stay right there. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation off the air, but I want to give the show notes one more time. Please make sure to check out the amazing book that I was a part of with 11 other authors called Trailblazing and Transforming: Entrepreneur Stories of People with Disabilities. You can get it on Amazon, you can get it through Kindle, and you can get it in paperback. Also, remember what I said at the beginning of the program. Please check out my GoFundMe and give $5, $10, $20, whatever you can give to help continue supporting the great content that I bring you every week. Also, if you want to have me come speak at your event, especially if it's for disabled folks, or even if it's not, you can email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. Thanks again, guys, for watching. This is the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud. I am your host, Nick Comstock. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.